the big story in Nigeria, which is the Finance Act of 2023, which was signed on May the 29th. That was the day President Muhammadu Buhari handed over to a new government. However, the implementation of the Finance Act was scheduled to begin on May the 1st, so we've got a bit of a dilemma here. But from all indications, the Finance Act 2033 may have to go through the desk of the new president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, before it goes into full effect. So we're trying to walk you through this piece of economic legislation. Welcome my guest on this tonight. Yomi Olugbenro is a tax professional and economic policy expert. Yomi is a partner and West Africa tax leader at Deloitte. That's a global finance, accounting, and advisory firm. Thanks for making it live with us tonight on the program. Yomi, good evening.
Bosun, good to be on your show this evening.
Thank you so much. Now give me. Thank you. Yes, I can hear you loud and clear here in the studios. Thank you so much, Yomi. Let's get started. Give me a broad shakedown of this new Finance Act of 2023. What are the chief highlights for you?
Well, Bosun, so you know we've become acquainted with the tradition of having the annual Finance Act. I think it started with the Finance Act of 2019. Traditionally, when the Appropriation Act is passed, there's an accompanying Finance Act that, kind of provide a direction for government on how to raise the revenue. This one came quite a bit late. It was expected to have been, passed together with the Appropriation Act for 2023, but there were a number of consultations that were happening, and we only had it passed just one day to the end of tenure, of former President Muhammadu Buhari. It was signed on 30th of May. So, like you will expect of Finance Act, it made quite a lot of changes to the various laws that we have. There are at least 11 laws that were amended. Laws on, direct taxes, indirect taxes, and a number of regulations that touches on public procurement, and all of that. There is at least something for every sector of the economy within the 13 provisions that we have within the Finance Act. Upstream petroleum operator, downstream and midstream, aviation, tourism sector, non-resident digital player, individuals, and even tiers of government. So the number of changes to how law that is governing the taxation of businesses and income is going to pan out right from here. Some new taxes were introduced. Some of the existing taxes were raised. And obviously, the number of changes that taxpayers could leverage to optimize their tax position. So, but overall, if I'm to give this a theme, I think government attempt to sanitize the incentive regime within our tax law and ensure that government is able to rake in a lot more revenue to be able to support and defray the cost of governance.
Interesting, and thank you for raising the curtain on that and how very significant, important economic legislation this is. But is anything significantly different in the new Finance Act 2033 from the previous ones over the past few years? Is there anything that you've noticed in the new one that was signed on the 28th by the immediate past President Muhammadu Buhari?
Well, there are changes, Bosun. I think each Finance Act has a focus. In some of the earlier years, there is a lot of attention on, particularly in the one we had in 2019, there were a lot of focus on trying to provide palliatives and incentive for MSMEs. There are other changes that focus on focusing on non-resident companies, among many other changes. I think in this particular one, there are new taxes and new levies that were introduced, which is quite a little bit of a surprise and maybe a departure from the general theme in the economy. You have new excise taxes, that were excise duties that were introduced on services that are provided in Nigeria, including telecom company. You have new import levies, in addition to the existing custom charges being introduced on goods that are imported from outside of Africa. And you also have quite a number of changes that increases taxes, right? Education tax has been raised from 2.5% to 3%. You have capital gains tax now being clearly demanded on players have become acquainted with that are being replaced and removed.
Yes, Yomi, thank you so much. I was just asking, well, if there's anything new in the Finance Act of 2023 that you think businesses or body corporates should take particular attention of.
Well, yes, I'm not sure if you had my response to the question earlier. I did explain that the Act came with, quite a broad range of changes. There are changes that touches on introduction of new taxpayer and every sector. And I think every taxpayer needs to pay, particular attention to that. Some of the changes, if you leverage it, will provide some bit of cushion and a bit of reduction in your tax payable. But quite a number of other changes will raise, the taxes payable. Maybe they touch on new taxes that government is introducing or taxes that have been raised. And there's quite a number of that. Whichever sector, whichever area of the economy that you operate in, there is a change that touches on what your tax position or tax consequence will be in 2023 and beyond.
My question, I'm going to rephrase that because of that glitch about businesses and body corporates in particular. What should they pay particular attention to in the new Finance Act for this year if I'm an organization, I'm a body corporate?
Yeah, I think corporate taxpayers should become particularly aware of the taxes that have just been introduced and taxes that have been raised. Virtually every limited liability company that pay taxes in Nigeria are exposed to education tax, for example. It's been raised from 2.5% to 3% per annum, and that's one change that I think we touch virtually every taxpayer. There are a number of reliefs and allowances, investment allowances on capex that companies have become quite used to. When companies, incur capital expenditure in in acquiring plant and machinery that are used for manufacturing and for their production, in addition to the traditional capital allowances, they are entitled to a 10% top-up, which is a significant amount for companies on their capex. That has been completely eliminated. That allowance is no longer available. There is a rural investment allowance that could range from 10% to 100% when businesses provide infrastructure like electricity, like road, like water, in locations that is far away from where those public, facilities exist. If you're a business and you provide those facilities in locations that are at least 20 kilometers away from where those facilities are available from government, you are entitled to certain, allowances that we call rural investment allowance, and it could be as high as 100%. An additional allowance, but that's been taken away. So there are quite a lot of allowances, reliefs that taxpayers have become acquainted with that they need to pay particular attention to, because the impact of that is that tax rates will ultimately go up from the commencement date of May 2023 and onwards.
Well, we're now in June, by the way, but we'll get to that in the manner of speaking. But so is the Finance Act just about tax, and more tax? What's in the Finance Act, for example, in relation to responsible public sector service such as procurement? There are provisions there for corrupt practices and so on.
Yeah, that's quite a spot-on question, Bosin. So I did mention that there are 11 different laws that were amended. So apart from the traditional Income Tax Act and VAT and personal income taxes, you also have laws like, Public Procurement Act, Anti-Corruption Law, Minister of Finance Incorporated Act, all of which, aim at, entrenching probity, accountability, and transparency, in the management of public finance. And we do have changes in them. Some of those changes, for example, try to sanitize award of contract and make specific provisions for, things like making sure that there are budgetary allocations or budgetary appropriation before contracts could be awarded. In the country where it's quite common to have instances where projects are abandoned and contracts are awarded without cash backing. So there are provisions within the Finance Act that ensure that public officers cannot make those award of contracts without ensuring that there is budgetary appropriation for the expenditure to be incurred. There are also provisions that require that there must be guidelines and plan and budgetary plans in place that guides and limit what a public officer could do and could not do in the award of contract, with very strict penalties. A public officer could end up, having a jail term of 3 years, for example, or pay significant amount of fine if those provisions are not complied with, for any of those contraventions. So there are quite a lot of regulations, and there are also other provisions that just seeks to ensure that from a taxpayer's perspective or from public officers' perspective, there's just a lot more sanity and transparency in how every corporate body and every public officer within the country displays and discharges their obligations and responsibilities.
Well said, Yomi. So should we look at the Finance Act as an economic document? How does it fit into the overarching economic direction of where we want the country to go? This is a Finance Act signed before the new administration came into office just about a week or two ago. And now we've got an old administration putting that in place. So what do you think is going to happen? How does it fit into our annual budgeting process? How will it go into the existing budget and into the one for 2024? Where's the sync here for me?
Well, I think making amendments to the existing regulations and law within the country, it's a critical element and a critical tool within the fiscal space that's available for government to ensure that they respond appropriately to what's happening within the broader economy. A number of taxpayers and policy analysts have been quite expectant that this Finance Act will have come into effect right from the beginning of the financial year, because that has become the pattern and the cycle that we've expected and will become acquainted with. But it's good enough that it's coming just as a new administration is coming in. So meaning that there's quite a lot of legal framework that could be that the country could be standing upon to ensure that we are able to to support the drive for generating more revenue, but in a predictable, in a determinable manner. Taxpayers are now charged with the responsibility of getting to know what's the need for us, what's government going to do, how is government going to raise taxes, and what is going to be our compliance burden or the obligation that is going to be placed on us. So I think it's quite a critical element in the puzzle, and it's a fantastic point, a fantastic place for a new administration to come in to say, look, this is what we inherited. The law has been passed, and we are only charged with the responsibility of implementing. And if in the course of the year, areas that that are inimical to business growth and complaints, like we see year after year, there are changes that were made in this new Finance Act that were made to correct part of the errors or the complaint that we have in the previous Finance Act. So it's a continuum, and taxpayers are a lot more interested in predictability and knowing what the policy direction is and what the laws are than a situation where it's left to the whims and caprices of administrators within the tax system.
But is the new president President Bola Ahmed Tinubu said in his inaugural speech that he's going to look at the multiplicity of taxes in Nigeria because he says it's a disincentive to investment. So how does that work with the New Finance Act? So does it mean that the New Finance Act would have to go back to the desk of the new president for him to take a second look or the first look into it before it goes into effect? We are way past May the 1st. We are today, June the 8th.
Well, unless there is, an amendment to the Act, it's already part of the regulations and the law, within the tax space that is already, to be implemented. The law was signed, the bill was signed on 30th of May, but even within the Act, the effective date was set to be, 1st of May. So it's already part of the body of laws, that is applicable. Now, but I think what the president could mean with the comment ascribed to him is that there is a plethora of laws and levies and charges bordering on taxes that actually require simplification and consolidation. Right, I actually just mentioned in the course of the conversation that there are new, taxes that are identified. If you put that within the existing complaint, that we have too many laws, that taxpayers are having to grapple with. What I expect the president will be doing, and the economic team supporting the president, is to be able to bring all of this law together, not just the Finance Act of 2023, all of the Finance Act that we've had, all of the various tax laws that we have, and how to simplify and how to consolidate. The truth is that there are just too many items of taxes and levies and charges that taxpayers, are burdened with. Beyond the quantum in terms of the amount that taxpayers have got to pay, just having too many number of taxes just creates inefficiencies and administrative burdens. We could make double, triple, 10 times, what we're making from the existing taxes by consolidating. Right, we can consolidate and raise the taxes and let it be, just few number of taxes rather than, different charges, different levies across different levels. Some payable to the federal government, some to the state. The local government also have, quite a long list of levies and charges that falls, under their jurisdiction. And all of this just raises the cost of compliance. It raises the burden of compliance, and it complicates the tax-paying environment, for taxpayers. I think what we should be doing, it's more than just, reviewing Finance Act of 2023. It's about reviewing the entire regulatory framework and seeing how to, consolidate, reduce them, and make sure that it's easier for taxpayer to comply because there are just fewer number of taxes to comply with.
So we've got a removal of fuel subsidy right on our table right now. Do you think the Finance Act 2023 will be impacted in any manner?
Well, nothing specific is said as far as maybe providing, specific palliative because of the removal of subsidy. If anything at all, I think there are quite a number of changes to petroleum operators that may, in fact, even stiffen the field. For example, the penalty regime that petroleum companies are exposed to have been raised significantly, and by significant I mean quite significant. You have instances where penalties of maybe late returned penalty or falsifying a report or making incorrect claims, that could be as little as 10,000 naira per day or 2,000 naira per day has been changed to upward of 10 million naira for some, 2 million naira for some. So the penalty regime has been raised. The penalty payable for infractions, various infractions. So this, of course, is intended to raise the level of compliance and ensure that companies comply, more appropriately with what the law is saying. So nothing specific, but yes, perhaps for individual there is at least an item that could, in a way, provide some bit of reduction in the effective tax rate. So we have a reintroduction of relief for life assurance premium, that individuals could claim for those who buy life policies and pay significant amount of premium. We used to have this in the law, but in 2021 Finance Act it was removed. Now it's been reintroduced. So if there is a palliative that individual could probably be looking forward to in the Finance Act, maybe that's one of them. There are a few other provisions that corporate taxpayers could take advantage of that could also, in a way, reduce the burden of taxes to be paid, particularly on the capital gains side. We now have provisions, for example, that when corporate taxpayers make losses, capital losses in the disposal of chargeable assets, they could set off the loss, right, against the gains they have made on the disposal of any other type of asset. And that can be significant, for corporate taxpayer. Prior to now, government is only interested in the gains you make when you dispose of chargeable assets. If you incur losses, government, has nothing to offer. But now we now have a provision where you could set off the losses, against any gains that you make. In fact, with a provision to be able to carry forward for another 5 years until it is relieved. So there are, quite some provisions like that taxpayers could, take advantage of and see how to optimize their tax position.
Interesting conversation with you, Yomi Olugbenro. Thank you so much. For the Petroleum Profit Tax Act, it's just quite amazing how we make laws here that if you have late filing for a petroleum business company, you pay a fine of 2,000 naira. It's just amazing. But again, it's 2 million naira now, by the way. So it's gone up. Thank you so much.